The October wind carried a sharp bite that evening, rattling through the tall pines at the edge of Hollow Brook. The trees seemed to whisper warnings as the fading sun draped the forest in bruised colors of orange and purple. 12-year-old Eliza Bennett wandered just a little farther down the dirt path, her laughter echoing thinly as if the woods were swallowing it whole. Behind her, her parents, Daniel and Margaret, trailed a few steps behind, enjoying the crisp air and their daughter's boundless curiosity. They had taken this trail many times before, but that night something in the air felt different. "Eliza, don't go too far," Margaret called, brushing a strand of dark hair from her face. Her voice trembled slightly, though she couldn't say why. Eliza only turned back with a grin, her cheeks flushed pink from the cold. Then, in the span of a heartbeat, her laughter cut off. The sound of her shoes crunching on fallen leaves stilled. By the time Margaret and Daniel reached the bend in the trail, the girl was gone. The woods were eerily quiet, except for the groaning sway of the trees. "Eliza," Daniel's voice rang out, heavy with rising panic. "Eliza, answer me!" He tore through the brush, his flashlight beam jerking wildly as he searched. Margaret's heart hammered in her chest. She clutched her coat tightly around herself and followed his frantic movements. The shadows seemed to multiply, reaching long fingers across the forest floor. It was Margaret who found it. On the path, half buried in leaves, sat an old doll. Its porcelain face was cracked, one glass eye missing, the other staring upward with a chilling, lifelike gleam. The dress was torn, faded, and dirt-stained. Margaret bent to pick it up, her hand trembling. "Daniel, this was not here before." Daniel shone the flashlight down and swore under his breath. "Where's Eliza? Why would this be here?" His voice broke on the last word, fear seeping into every syllable. He reached for the doll, and as his fingers brushed its cold porcelain cheek, he flinched. The surface felt unnervingly warm, almost like living skin. Margaret clutched the doll tightly against her chest, despite a deep unease coiling in her stomach. "Daniel," she whispered, her throat dry. I think this is her." The trees creaked as if in cruel agreement, and for the first time in years, both parents felt something ancient and merciless watching them from the shadows. Back home, the Bennetts placed the doll on the kitchen table under the dim yellow glow of a single bulb. Neither Daniel nor Margaret could eat. They sat across from it, watching as though it might spring to life at any moment. Its one remaining glass eye reflected the light, giving the unnerving impression that it was watching them in return. The silence in the house was suffocating, interrupted only by the faint tick of the grandfather clock in the hall.
"This is madness," Daniel muttered, pressing his palms into his temples. "We should call the police, tell them Eliza's missing." His voice cracked on the last word. He couldn't bring himself to say she was gone. Margaret shook her head slowly, her eyes fixed on the doll. "And tell them what? That our daughter vanished into thin air and left this behind?" Her hands trembled as she traced the cracks on the porcelain face. She froze when she felt a faint vibration beneath her fingertips, like a heartbeat. "Daniel, it's alive." He laughed nervously, though it sounded hollow. "You're in shock, you're imagining things." Yet when he leaned closer, when his hand touched the doll's arm, he felt it too, a soft, rhythmic thrum pulsing through the ceramic shell. His breath caught in his throat. "Dear God." Then came the whisper, faint like wind slipping through the cracks of an old house. The sound seemed to seep from the doll itself. Margaret's eyes widened. "Did you hear that?" Daniel swallowed hard, his voice barely a whisper. It said, "Mommy." His hands shook as he pulled back, knocking over his chair in the process. The doll sat motionless, its cracked lips closed, yet the word still echoed in both their minds. Margaret's face crumpled. She bent low, staring into its one glass eye. "Eliza, is that you, sweetheart?" For a long moment there was only silence, and then, ever so faintly, the doll's head jerked, as though nodding. Margaret screamed and stumbled back, colliding with the counter. Daniel, white as chalk, could only whisper his daughter's name over and over, as if saying it enough times would undo the nightmare. The Bennets didn't sleep that night. The doll, Eliza, remained on the table, too terrifying to touch, yet impossible to look away from. Her glass eye glinted in the dim light, and every so often, the faint whisper of her voice drifted into the silence, repeating one word: cold. By morning, Daniel was pacing the living room, his face gaunt and pale. There has to be an explanation, a curse, a story, something. People have lived in Hollowbrook for centuries. Someone must know. His voice shook with desperation. Margaret, clutching the doll in her lap as though protecting it, nodded through her tears. If this is a curse, then someone cast it, and if someone cast it, they can undo it. That afternoon they drove to the outskirts of town, to a sagging cabin that smelled of moss and smoke. Everyone in Hollowbrook knew of Agatha Muir, the recluse whispered to be a witch. She was ancient, with hair as white as cobwebs and eyes that seemed to pierce through flesh and bone. She opened the door before they even knocked. "You've brought the child," she rasped, her voice like...
Daniel stepped forward, his jaw tight despite the tremor in his hands. "Tell us the price. We'll pay it." The keeper tilted its monstrous head.
"Blood for blood, flesh for flesh. To give her back, another must take her place. The woods must feed."
Its words rattled through the clearing like thunder. Margaret's heart froze. She looked at Daniel, then at the doll. Her maternal instincts screamed louder than her fear. "Take me," she whispered, stepping forward. Daniel's eyes widened. "No, Margaret, don't!" But the keeper's roots already twisted toward her, sensing her sacrifice. Suddenly, Eliza's voice rang out, clear and strong from the doll. "No, Mommy, don't!" The porcelain shell cracked, splintering, as though the child within fought to break free. The keeper roared in fury, its massive limbs thrashing. Daniel lunged, grabbing Margaret, shielding her. "If you want blood," he shouted, "take mine." The forest fell silent. The keeper loomed over him, its hollow sockets boring into Daniel's eyes. Slowly, the doll split apart in Margaret's arms, shards falling like glass tears. And there, trembling and gasping for breath, was Eliza, alive, fragile and whole. But Daniel was gone. The keeper's roots had wrapped around him, dragging him into the soil. The ground closed over his body without a trace, leaving only the echo of his final scream. Margaret clutched her daughter, sobbing into her hair. The forest exhaled, its hunger satisfied, and the shadows retreated. Eliza whispered against her mother's ear, her voice broken but real. "Where's Daddy?" Margaret could not answer. She only held her tighter, as the woods behind them whispered with satisfaction, forever keeping its price.